On the 6th July 1988, a tragic disaster took place on the Piper Alpha oil platform in the North Sea off the coast of Scotland. Multiple accounts of safety lapses aboard the Piper Alpha oil rig resulted in a series of devastating explosions. This resulted in a huge loss financially. The largest offshore oil disaster in history impacted 10% of the UK's oil production and resulted in financial losses estimated at $2 billion. And more importantly, it killed 165 people. Only 61 people survived this accident. To this very day, it is one of the most expensive disasters to have ever taken place. This is another episode of Uncovering the Disasters from Around the World, and you are watching Disastrology. To better understand this case and its causes, we need to examine all the factors that contributed to the incident. Chemical engineers are quite familiar with process safety accidents like this one, but chemists are often less aware of them. The Piper Alpha tragedy had a devastating impact on UK oil production, and the families of the victims are still grieving this accident. At the time of the incident, there were approximately 226 men on board, with more than half of them losing their lives. With only a few survivors, some details have come to light. Now let's trace the origins of this massive oil production rig. The discovery of North Sea oil and gas was a major benefit for Great Britain, and Piper Alpha, operated by Occidental Petroleum, played a key role. Initially, it was an oil-only platform. It was later adapted to also produce gas and featured 4 safety modules with firewalls. By July 1988, Piper Alpha was responsible for 10% of the North Sea's annual oil and gas production. In 1972, 4 companies, Occidental Petroleum Ltd., Getty Oil International Ltd., Allied Chemical Ltd., and Thomson Scottish Associates Ltd., formed a joint venture and obtained an oil exploration license. They discovered the Piper oil field in January 1973 and began building the platform, pipelines, and support structures. Oil production began in December 1976, reaching about 250,000 barrels per day, later increasing to 360,000 barrels per day, before declining to 125,000 barrels per day by 1988. Nevertheless, it was a significant producer of oil. The Piper Alpha platform, located about 120 miles northeast of Aberdeen in 474 feet of water, produced crude oil and natural gas from 36 wells. The Flotta oil terminal in the Orkney Islands, built by OPCAL, processed oil from Piper Alpha, Claymore, and Tartan oil fields. A 30-inch diameter pipeline transported oil from Piper Alpha to Flotta, running 128 miles. The Piper Alpha platform was central to a network of pipelines connecting it to other platforms and the shore. The Tartan field sent oil to Claymore, with the oil then flowing from Claymore through a short pipeline to join the Piper Flotta line. Gas pipelines ran from Tartan to Piper, and from Piper to the MCP-01 compression platform, which also received gas from the Frigg field. MCP-01 then sent the gas to the St. Fergus gas terminal via a 108-mile pipeline. The pipelines held significant quantities of oil and gas. The main oil line to Flotta contained around 70,000 tons of oil, while the 3 gas lines connecting Piper to surrounding platforms held nearly 2,000 tons of high-pressure gas. The pressure in the pipelines was around 127 bar. Piper Alpha's facilities were designed by Bechtel and McDermott Hudson, with the 8-legged jacket built in Ardersier in France and installed in 1975. The jacket was 165 meters tall, with 144.5 meters submerged. Topside modules, weighing around 10,000 tons, were added in late 1976. The platform had 4 main modules separated by firewalls and included a drilling derrick, living quarters, and flare booms. The conversion to gas compromised safety by placing sensitive areas close together, contributing to the disaster. The platform contained about 80 tons of process fluids and 160 tons of diesel fuel. Piper Alpha was highly productive, and when Occidental sought to increase production rates, they were granted permission on the condition that gas would be exported rather than flared. In 1978, Piper Alpha added a gas conservation module to comply with UK gas conservation regulations and reduce flaring. This change meant the platform operated in Phase 2 mode, where the GCM processed and re-injected condensate and compressed gas for export. From late 1980 until July 1988, the platform used to be operated in this mode. As technology advanced, using outdated technology became less ideal for the rig. By July 1988, Piper Alpha was undergoing major upgrades, including the replacement of the GCM. The platform was switched back to Phase 1 mode without the GCM just 3 days before the accident. Despite a demanding schedule, Occidental chose to keep the platform running in Phase 1 mode rather than shut it down. At the time of the accident, Piper Alpha weighed around 34,000 tons and was producing nearly 125,000 barrels of oil per day and 33 million cubic feet of gas per day. Everything seemed to be going well and profitable so far, but a tragedy was just around the corner for Piper Alpha. After 12 years of successful operation, Piper Alpha became the first offshore platform to be destroyed by a disaster. A detailed investigation uncovered the series of events that led to its tragic loss. Let's examine the details emerging from this incident. At approximately 21:45 on July 6, 1988, condensate pump B experienced an unusual malfunction. This triggered a series of events. Gas alarms were activated, the first stage gas compressors shut down, and the flare increased significantly in size. These signs indicated a serious problem. By around 22 CU, a massive explosion occurred on the Piper Alpha platform. Witnesses reported hearing a prolonged, high-pitched screeching noise before a bright flash and the intense impact of an explosion. What was the condition of the control room at this point? The explosion had already severely impacted the control room. The men inside were knocked to the floor by the blast, while those in the accommodation block were either thrown from their beds or lifted from their chairs. The initial explosion, which occurred in Module C, the gas compressor module, caused a condensate line in Module B, the oil separation module, to rupture. Witnesses reported seeing a second flash and a huge fireball erupting into the night sky. About 20 minutes later, at 22:20, a high-pressure gas line from the tartan platform ruptured, releasing gas at a rate of around 3 tons per second. Another 50 minutes later, at 22:50, a gas line from the Frigg field to St. Fergus also ruptured. A rescue craft launched from the standby vessel Sandhaven was destroyed by this explosion, killing 2 of its 3 crew members and the 6 men they had just rescued. At 23:20, the gas line to the Claymore platform ruptured. The intense fires had severely weakened Piper Alpha's structure, causing the main accommodation module to collapse into the sea, killing all 81 men inside. By early morning on July 7, 1988, 3/4 of Piper Alpha's topsides and significant parts of the jacket were destroyed, lying 140 meters below the sea. The fires, fueled by ruptured wells and pipelines, reached heights of 200 meters with an energy consumption rate of about 100 gigawatts. That is approximately 3 times the UK's total energy use. The situation grew more intense with every passing minute. It remained unclear how a pipe with a temporary sealing disc, not connected to an active pump, could cause such a catastrophic loss of condensate containment. It is hard to imagine the fear and horror that crept over every person who witnessed the horrific sights and effects of this disaster, including all the people who became first-hand victims. It took over 3 weeks to extinguish the fires, and Piper Alpha was toppled into the sea on March 28, 1989. Of the 226 people on board that night, only 61 survived. The fatalities included 109 from smoke inhalation, 13 from drowning, 11 from injuries, and 4 cases where the cause of death was undetermined. Additionally, 30 bodies were never recovered. But before we delve further into the information retrieved by the investigation, a very interesting question comes to light. How is it even possible for a pipeline containing no fuel to lead to a high-pressure leak and explosion? A series of details reveals some twists. Almost a week after the disaster, Lord Cullen was appointed to lead a public inquiry, which lasted 180 days. His report was published on November 13, 1990. The inquiry examined evidence from many witnesses, including survivors and experts. Determining the actual cause of the disaster was challenging, primarily due to the lack of physical evidence and the absence of surviving senior management. Various possible causes were considered, but many were deemed unlikely due to requiring a series of improbable events without evidence. The inquiry concluded that the most likely cause of the first explosion was the release of about 30 kilos of condensate, mainly propane, through an unsecured blind flange in Module C. This occurred because a pressure safety relief valve had been removed during maintenance on the standby condensate pump. The reconstructions revealed that the replacement disc used while the safety valve was off for maintenance was likely only loosely fitted and tightened by hand instead of with a wrench. This situation created a gap, which might have been invisible to the eye, allowing pressurized material to leak through. Despite the pipe being connected to an inactive pump with no fuel or ignition source, the loosely fitted disc was found to be the probable cause of the first explosion. In the rush to keep production running after the active condensate pump tripped at 21:45, the inactive reserve pump was reactivated and connected to the poorly sealed pipe. Condensate was then introduced into the reserve pump, which led to a major release in Module C and triggered the first explosion. But that was nothing compared to what was about to happen next. The initial explosion was minor compared to what followed. The explosion in Module C unexpectedly breached the supposed firewall into Module B. Although the firewall was designed to withstand high temperatures for up to 6 hours, it failed against explosions. The investigation found that the firewall between Modules B and C could not handle significant explosions. This led to remnants from Module C rupturing a weak condensate pipe in Module B. Remarkably, this chain-like event still does not tell the full story. The explosions in the first two neighboring modules were not large enough to explain the massive fireball that engulfed the platform at 22:20. Further evidence revealed an unexpected third fire location, not in or near the earlier modules, but on the deck below them. This area was surprising because it had graded flooring, which should have allowed burning oil to drip into the sea without any significant incident, let alone such a massive tragedy. However, photographs showed that rubber matting placed on the grating collected burning oil from Module B. This oil then superheated a high-pressure gas pipeline running to the tartan rig, causing it to rupture. This resulting in the release of 15-30 tons of gas provided an immediate fuel source for the fire. Not to forget that it is the equivalent to the entire annual domestic gas consumption of the UK. After conferring with Bollins and others on the main production deck, lead production operator Robert Vernon and safety officer Robert Carroll put on breathing apparatus and headed to start the diesel fire pumps manually. They were never seen again, but it can be well imagined what happened to them. Shortly before 22:20, the OIMs of Tartan and Claymore learned about the explosion and fire on Piper Alpha. However, they chose not to shut down production and waited for orders from Aberdeen. By then, 70 to 80 men had gathered in the canteen, where access to the lifeboats or helideck was blocked by smoke and fire. The room was becoming unbearably hot and smoky. Piper's OIM did not order an evacuation. At 23:20, the Claymore gas line ruptured, worsening the already massive jet fires on Piper Alpha. The Claymore OIM had orders to shut down production and the gas flow line to Piper Alpha. He had started a pipeline blowdown, but it wasn't complete when the rupture occurred. The Tartan gas pipeline had been shut down around 22:30, with its blowdown starting around 23:20. By 23:45, with crucial support structures failing from the intense heat, the platform began to collapse. The crane fell first, followed by the drilling derrick. The generation and utilities module D and the fireproofed accommodation block, which still had crewmen inside, fell into the North Sea. By 0:45 on July 7th, almost all of Piper Alpha had collapsed, with only Module A remaining. The source found in the investigation of Piper Alpha found a serious flaw in the safety protocols, specifically those that require that all operations, maintenance or otherwise, be carried out in a safe manner, and unemployment at the same time can cause problems for workers. Unexpected attempts to recover the sunken wreck revealed the remains of documents that proved to be a fatal flaw. Special work permits have been issued for the maintenance of the condensate pump and the safety valve. Now, the question arises, why are these licenses issued separately? Well, each work permit establishes safe work practices in a specific location and is held at the location where the work is performed. The gas condensate pump and its safety valve are located on different floors of the tank. This separation means that technicians checking the integrity of the pump will have no indication that the relief valve has been removed and replaced with a spacer for a short period of time. When the decision was made to start the backup pump after the first pump failed, the operators were unaware of the removal of the associated safety valve. The pump license does not mention the safety area. This discrepancy in paperwork is said to be the main reason for the tragic series of events that took place within those 90 minutes, which led to the fatal accident of the Piper Alpha oil rig and the loss of 167 lives that fateful evening. At Piper Alpha, interdepartmental, cross-team, and cross-team communications were personal, informal, and work-appropriate. While appropriate communications may have some benefits, minimum standards have neither been established nor met. Incoming teams should receive introductory safety training from the safety department. There was a big gap between what the security service intended to convey and what it actually conveyed. Communication is a two-way thing. According to the witnesses, if he was already working at sea, the training was short or non-existent. The safety training consisted of giving them a pamphlet and asking them to read it. Much of the information was outdated or not applicable to Piper Alpha. Operators kept a logbook, but often failed to record maintenance activities. The submission of the teams was a busy time. Western procedure requires the maintenance and operations teams to meet, inspect the work site, and sign permits together. However, the operators were busy making their transfers at the same time, and the practice developed where the maintenance staff signed the permit and left it in the control room or the security office. During the shift change, the main production operators did not review or discuss the suspended permits. The official investigation into the Piper Alpha accident was published 2 years after the event. There were 2 books, one of which focused on analyzing the root cause of the disaster. This entire investigation aimed to identify the main cause that started the chain of events that led to the destruction of the tower. Although an event can be briefly explained by describing the cause itself, for example, flammable condensate from a loose pipe connection in Module C, this explanation considers the connection last on the list of events. To consider that would just be skimming through the surface. To truly understand an accident, we must look beyond the immediate cause to find the root cause. The real problem in the workplace, if solved, can stop the chain of events that caused the accident. In the case of Piper Alpha, the issue was a bug in the work permit system. This basic mistake is not only a reason, but also a major reason for the worst oil spill and the ongoing struggle of the survivors and families of the victims. Current safety research is increasingly recognizing that the work environment, not individual behavior, is responsible for 90% of safety failures. While many factors were responsible for this tragedy, which one according to you had the biggest role? Was it miscommunication or fate? Or maybe corporate greed that did not put a stop to the production? Do let us know your thoughts down in the comments. And don't forget to like this video in case you haven't already, and share this with your diver friends. For more such videos, don't forget to subscribe to Disastrology, and we will be coming to you soon with more such cases.